Brahmanath. Om. Om. Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Swastha.
Hello students, welcome to the next video, the legend behind the legend with unit 4 and 5. Before we get to unit 4 and 5, let's just gather what did we discuss, what did we learn in unit 3. In unit 3, we learned that when Hariharan happened to go and meet Saroj Raj Chaudhary, and both of them had a nice conversation with sips of coffee. At that time, Saroj Raj Chaudhary or Mr. Chaudhary narrated the first story to Hariharan Balakrishnan. He said that when Khairi was in her young stage, at that time, there was a crate, a baby crate, and Khairi was very curious to see the reaction of the crate. So every time the crate used to get closer to Khairi, Mr. Chaudhary used to pull the tail of the crate back. And this, because why was he doing it? Because Mr. Chaudhary was trying to mark the reaction of Khairi to the presence of a baby crate. And Mr. Chaudhary became unmindful at some point of time. The baby crate turned around and bit Mr. Chaudhary. Mr. Chaudhary, he immediately tied a tourniquet, a piece of cloth which takes place like a bandage, okay? And he took out the poison. He also saw a doctor, means consulted a doctor. But poison, a little bit of poison had entered his bloodstream, and so he became a permanent patient of hypoglycemia. And further, when Mr. Chaudhary became a little more engaged in his work, talking to his men, the forest guards employed in different parts of the forest over the wireless VHF, here Hariharan happened to notice a veritable, means various different kind of a joint family. Who were the members in this joint family? A mongoose, a Mongolian, wildcat, twins, then a country dog, a blind hyena. He happened to notice all these animals in Mr. Chaudhary's menagerie as a joint family, and they were just not like pets, they were also having their own names. So now let's go to unit 4. Khairi's story started on October 5, 1974, when 12 Khairiya tribals of Simlipal bought a 2-month-old tiger cub to Saroj Raj Chaudhary, an officer of the Indian Forest Service. So unit 4 briefs out about how Khairi reached the hands of Mr. Chaudhary and how Mr. Chaudhary became the foster father of Khairi. And how did it start? It all started on October 5th of October in 1974, when 12 Khairiya tribals, they got this, she was a cub at that time, okay? A very small baby. Khairi was a small baby, and a baby tiger is known to be a cub. And she was a cub. She was in her infancy stage. And at that time, these 12 Khairiya tribals, they bought her and they handed over this 2-month cub to Saroj Raj Chaudhary, who was the IFS or Indian Forest Service or Indian Forest Officer at that time. Saroj noticed that it was a female, famished and confused. Saroj came to find out. Saroj means Mr. Chaudhary. He learned that the 2 months cub was a female and was famished. Famished means very hungry. Obviously, a cub departed away from mother and she was hungry and she was confused because she was not able to smell. Her parents, the tiger and the tigress nearby, she was finding herself, the smell was something different and she was hungry and she was confused. His first experience of what was to became his passion in life was angry snails and scratching claws. So what was the first experience that Mr. Chaudhary had derived from this 2 months cub? And what did this 2 months cub, Khairi, do? At the first sight, what did she do? She was angry, she was hungry and confused, and so she was angry. Snails means a growl or growling, okay? Snails means a growl or growling sounds. So she made angry, hungry sounds and scratching claws. The palm, the nails there in the claw of an animal, okay? That's called scratching. Marks made or by nails or marks made by the poke of nails. When you poke like this with the nails, that's called P-O-K. Poke of nails is called scratching. But the veteran forester, veteran means very experienced or highly experienced forester and instinctive lover of wildlife knew how to handle a hungry, angry cow. The forester was a very experienced one, and here instinctive means natural tendency. So as Mr. Chaudhary was a very experienced IFS, he was a forest officer who had years of experience and he had dealt animals in this way. He knew how to handle it. Okay, he knew the natural tendency of these animals, how they would behave and how to capture and handle them. And he was undoubtedly, Mr. Chaudhary was a lover of wildlife. How to handle a hungry, angry cow. He imitated the sounds of a mother tigress. So he just knew what to do. What did he do? Imitate means to copy. Imitated means copied. So immediately Mr. Chaudhary, he copied or imitated the sounds of a mother tigress. Within minutes, her confidence was firmly anchored in the fostering human, is how he recalled those first few minutes between the legends. So he's saying, what did Mr. Chaudhary? He's saying all this to Hariharan Balakrishnan. So what does Mr. Chaudhary say? He says that the moment I did make or copy or imitate the sound of a mother tigress, the cow, Khairi, she immediately got strong enough. She found the confidence. She set back. She was all set. She felt secure now in that fostering human. You know what's fostering human? Raising someone to be an accepted member of a family or community. Fostering human means raising someone to be an accepted member of the community or family. You can also take it as a family is known as a fostering human. And this is how Mr. Chaudhary recollects, he memorizes, okay, he feels nostalgic when he's speaking about Khairi to Hariharan, that how she came to the Similipal forest when 12 Khariya tribals brought her and handed over to Mr. Chaudhary, how she was hungry, angry, confused, she was making growling sounds, she was angry enough and she was trying to scratch with her nails, her claws, how she was just making all things because she was missing her place. The tigress, she was missing, she was able to smell and find a different place, and how wildlife lover. And so he handled the situation so easily by making the sounds or imitating the sounds of her mother, tigress, and she settled down. Kyrie was a 2-month cub, settled down very calmly, and she got back that strong content or the strong belief, or she set back in that fostering human. This is how Mr. Chaudhary is recollecting, he's memorizing within those few minutes about himself and Kyrie. Early next morning, Saroj started for his inspection of the tiger reserve area. I tagged along in the jeep that snaked through narrow road in the woods amidst lush foliage. So here, the next morning, what happened? Saroj, Mr. Chaudhary, had to go for inspection because he was the forest officer, he was IFS, so he had to go for inspection to the tiger reserve area. I tagged, here I refers to Hariharan Balakrishnan. He says that I tagged means to join. So he says that I joined Mr. Chaudhary, and both Mr. Chaudhary and myself, we went in a jeep, and as it was not a plain area that they would very comfortably ride their jeep on the plain road. It was a tiger reserve area, it was a jungle, so they had to go through the roads which were just having turns and twists and turns, just like a snake, okay? And very narrow, very narrow. What's the opposite of narrow? Broad. So narrow roads in the woods. And MS means they had to move in the middle. The jeep had to run in the middle. Why? Because of lush foliage. What does this lush foliage mean? Leaves of trees growing luxuriantly means in leisure. The trees, when we plant trees, we have plants and we have trees in the garden. We do trim, we do cut the branches and bring them to shape and order so that looks good in the garden, or the garden looks good. But it was a forest, a deep, dense forest and a tiger reserve area. The trees and the branches, the leaves, they grew in an in-order way, okay? And that's called a lush foliage. So Hariharan and Mr. Chaudhary went in a jeep and they had to go through twists and turns just like a snake because it was in the woods and the road was not very clear and plain. They had to move in the middle of the road because in either side of the roads, the leaves of the trees and the branches were all grown very unevenly. My mother gave me a gun for my 8th birthday. Here Mr. Chaudhary is saying something again. He's narrating his childhood experience to Hariharan Balakrishnan. My mother gave me a gun for my 8th birthday. As a young man, I shot wildlife with abandon. Abandon means gave up. And gave up is actually a phrasal word. Gave up. Phrasal word means abandon. Okay. So what did here Mr. Chaudhary say to Hariharan on the way when they were going to the tiger reserve area in the jeep? He said that in my 8th birthday, my mother gifted me a gun and I did shoot, I did kill lot of animals, okay? And as a young man, I shot wildlife with abandon. So he's saying that as a young man, I shot wildlife and then I gave up. But soon I realized that there is greater happiness in conserving these beautiful animals that to do no wanton harm to man is one of the things he told me about his life during that long travel. So the discussion is going on during that long travel, and so what did Mr. Chaudhary further add to that? He said that on his 8th birthday he was gifted a gun by his mother, and as young he shot, but later he gave up this habit as he realized that happiness was not in killing, happiness was in preserving, conserving. And he says that animals do not wanton harm. Wanton means injury to man is one of the things he told me about his life during that long travel. At that time, he was an authority on the tiger and director of Project Tiger in India. So during the time when Hariharan visited Mr. Chaudhary and Khairi, at that time Mr. Chaudhary was holding the post of director of Project Tiger in India. Saroj introduced the tiger tracing method of tiger senses, where the pug marks of each animal was distinctive. Measurements and characteristics are meticulously recorded. So here pug marks refers to the footmarks, or you can say the print or track of an animal. Okay, that's called the pug marks. Footmarks or the print or track of an animal. So here Mr. Chaudhary at that time was the director of the tiger or the director of Project Tiger in India, and he had introduced, Mr. Chaudhary had introduced the tiger method or the tracing of the tigers, the method of tracing tiger senses with the use of the pug marks or the footmarks or the print or the trace of these animals. And how they were measured? They were measured very clearly. Distinctive means clearly or very clear measurements were taken of the footprints, and the characters were also revealed the characteristics, and very meticulously, meticulously means carefully, very carefully, each and every point was recorded about the animal. Okay, for the night we camped at a guest house deep in the jungle. So for the night, that night they had to stay back in the jungle, and they camp means when you go for an outdoor place which acts as a temporary accommodation for you. That's a camp, okay, a temporary accommodation. So at a guest house in the jungle, it was a wooden structure with functional rooms and a bath. So it was a wooden structure, the house or the guest house where Hariharan and Mr. Chaudhary did spend their night. It had structure. How was it? It was a functional room. It had functional rooms and a bath. Okay? Functional rooms means rooms which serve as a purpose. Your bedroom, living room. Okay? So it serves as a purpose. It's called a functional room. So the guest house where Mr. Chaudhary and Hariharan did stay back, there they had the guest house had functional rooms and a bath. It was built on slits. Slits means poles or pillars. Okay, it means a tall pillar with poles. A tall pillar with poles, or you can take it as poles, where you have 4 pillars and they stand as poles, and the house or the room or the guest houses over the pillar. And stood a good 15 feet above the ground. You know, it wasn't a normal house on the ground. 15 feet above the ground, the guest house having functional rooms and a bath that stand 15 feet up the ground. I experienced for the first time one night atop a magnificent makan. Magnificent can mean exceptional for its kind. Magnificent means exceptional. It means exceptional for its kind. Okay? And makan is actually a Hindi word, and it means house. So what experience did Hariharan have there when they reached in the morning, when they did go to the tiger project or the tiger tracing area? What did he do there? What experience did he gain there? They stayed back that night in that area, in that reserve, and so at night they had to camp or go for a temporary accommodation in a guest house. And the guest house had functional rooms and a bath. Apart from that, the most unique thing here was that the house did stand 15 feet above the ground, okay, with pillars and poles. And Hariharan says that mansion Makan. And he did love that stay because he says that he never did enjoy such a stay before. So let's go to Unit 5. We have completed Unit 4. So let's go to Unit 5. So did the writer meet Mr. Chaudhary for the second time? What new animals did he see there? How long did he stay with Mr. Chaudhary? These are the 3 questions and we'll find out the answers to these 3 questions in Unit 5. I went to Khairi Jashipur again after 3 months as I wanted to know more about Khairi. So I here refers to Hariharan. Balakrishnan as Hariharan the author felt so delightful. He was so touched and moved by his stay at Khairi Jashipur and meeting Mr. Chaudhary and Khairi. He was so moved that he again decided, he was curious to go and meet them again for the second time. I went to Khairi Jashipur again after 3 months as I wanted to know more about Khairi. Saroj was gracious enough to welcome me once again. Gracious means kind, or you can say courteous, okay? Gracious means kind, you can say courteous, you can say warmly. Clear? That's gracious. So Mr. Chaudhary was so courteous, he was so kind, he was so gracious that he again did very boldly invite, he accepted the invitation of Hariharan Balakrishnan. In addition to my old friends in that house, this time I found an 8-foot long addition, a young python. So in addition to means besides. In addition to means besides. B-E-S-I-D-E-S, besides. So besides, beside, B-E-S-I-D-E. Then what does beside mean? Come on, any one of you? Beside mean by the side of. Clear? B-E-S-I-D-E, beside mean by the side of. Besides means in addition to. So in addition to Khairi, the tigress, the bear, the sloth bear, Jambu, then a mongoose, a Mongolian, wildcat twins, a country dog, then a blind hyena. In addition to all, this time he found a new member in the family, in the joint family, in the veritable joint family. And who was the new member? That member was an 8-foot long young python. Okay? Within the next couple of hours, I continued my quest. Quest means search. Okay? Quest means search. Quest means search. It's written here for you. Clear? So, within the next couple of hours, I continued my quest of the man and his passion. Passion means a powerful emotion. So he was, who is I? I is Hariharan. So within a couple of hours of reaching, and when he was there, Hariharan, he started his search. Okay, and he was really trying to find out about Mr. Chaudhary and his powerful emotion. Okay, but then there was a wireless message from the World Wildlife Fund. So when this was going on, there was a message for Mr. Chaudhary from the WWF, means World Wildlife Fund. Saroj was asked to immediately catch a flight for an important meeting at New Delhi the next day. Mr. Chaudhary had to leave immediately because he had to attend an important meeting in Delhi the next day. We drove. We here refers to Mr. Chaudhary and Hariharan. So he couldn't stay along. He had to also move because Mr. Chaudhary had to move. He had to go and attend a very important meeting at Delhi. And so Hariharan left along with Mr. Chaudhary. Drove, the past tense of drive. Drive, drove, driven. So we drove to the Dum Dum airport and I saw Dum Dum Airport. You know Dum Dum Airport, now it's known as the Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose Airport. It's now known as the Netaji Subhash Chandra Bose Airport. And he says that over there when they got down, I saw him off. Saw him off means to see him off, or to say your goodbye, or to say bye. Okay, so that's what it means that Hariharan, he got down there at Kolkata, and this Dum Dum Airport is in West Bengal, or it's in West Bengal, and here he got down, both of them they got down, and over there Hariharan said his goodbye to Mr. Chaudhary and he left. That was the last time I met this legend behind a legend. I repeat, that was the last time I met. I here refers to Hariharan Balakrishnan is saying that I met this legend behind a legend. So this legend means the first legend behind the second legend. And who's the first legend? The first legend is Mr. Saroj Raj Chaudhary. So here Hariharan is saying that was the last meet of mine. That's for the last time I did meet Mr. Saroj Raj Chaudhary, who was the legend behind Khairi, who was the second legend. Clear? The second legend is Khairi. In just over 3 months, Khairi died. So after 3 months, Khairi died. Saroj Raj Chaudhary did not live much longer. After the death of Khairi, Mr. Saroj Raj Chaudhary also did not live longer. A unique tale of the tiger ended there. Unique means something which is unmatched, or you can say being the only one of its kind. K-I-N-D. Being the only one of its kind or unmatched. So here Hariharan says that the unique or the unmatched tale means story of a tiger ended up here with the death of Khairi and the death of Mr. Saroj Raj Chaudhary. A salute is due. He still says that still he salutes. He owes, he's owing to, and at least now 25 years hence. Still he salutes, he says, and with the death of Khairi and Mr. Saroj Raj Chaudhary, a very unmatched and a unique tale or a story of a tigress came to an end with the death of Khairi and Mr. Chaudhary. So with this, we have completed Unit 4 and 5. Let's discuss few questions. After what interval of time did the writer visit Mr. Chaudhary for the second time? After 3 months. After 3 months, the writer Hariharan Balakrishnan visited Saroj Raj Chaudhary as he was very curious and had a deep dwelling desire to meet Mr. Chaudhary and Khairi. What new addition to Chaudhary family did he find there? He found an 8-foot long young python added to his veritable joint family when Hariharan did go to meet Mr. Chaudhary for the second time. So with this, we have ended up with the chapter, The Legend Behind a Legend. Thank you.